Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation, folks. We got a lot to talk about. First, let's talk a little bit about this GOP debate that happened last night. We'll talk about what really stuck out for you. And even though it was chaotic, it was messy, and in one particular moment, a little cringy. We'll talk a little bit about that, folks. Also, let's talk a little bit about learning and advancing racial equity as we check in with Rebecca Irby, who is a Nobel Peace Prize winner, to talk about her work that she's doing in the city of Detroit and around the country. Later, we'll talk about how majorities of Blacks see racism in the media, a vast majority, regardless of their political affiliation. This is based on a new Pew Research study, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And then later on, we check in with DC author. He's a man that's been telling stories about the streets of DC, Mr. Kevin Quattlebaum. He's going to be joining us. So, folks, we got a lot to chat about. So talk to us. Join us in the conversation on our YouTube chat under Roland Martin. Be a part of the Culture Crew and stay with us. It's all coming at you on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Happy Thursday, and thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Big shout out to your online culture crew, man, that's checking in from all around the country. I see you. I know what y'all are up to. I know where you live. No, I don't know where y'all live, but big shout out to all of the culture crew that's checking in today as we have these conversations. And folks, we are streaming live on our home website of blackstarnetwork.com. Do your due diligence. Go to blackstarnetwork.com today. Download the app for free. Make sure you follow us on social media under Black Star Network. And we would love your financial support, because your support powers this digital movement we are embarked upon. So make sure you do your due justice and make sure you provide and continue to invest in Black Star Network here on blackstarnetwork.com. Also, we are streaming live on Amazon News on your Fire TV. Big shout out to Amazon for that distribution, as well as we also streaming on Plex TV. And you can find us on both platforms 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we would love to get your support there. All right, let me jump in very quickly because, folks, we are trying to figure out what just happened last night. The GOP debate that happened last night. Some of you may have tuned in, others may not have tuned in, but we got to at least mention it did happen. Of course, this is the second debate for the Republicans. Former President Donald Trump was not present at this debate, and it showed. And we saw a little bit of a difference in how these candidates wanted to present themselves as the alternative to Trump. And unlike what we saw in the first debate with Vivek Ramaswamy really taking the lead, he wasn't that guy on this debate. The New York Times had penned that Governor Nikki Haley really serves as the winner of this particular debate. And it'll be interesting to hear what y'all have to say about that. But what stood out for you? And what seemed to be very messy, very chaotic, and as I mentioned, cringe-worthy part. Now, there were a lot of things talked about, but I do want to just briefly just kind of speak to the civics of these debates. And let me just say, y'all folks, political theater. Let's start there. Political theater is something that has been a part of the American political landscape for many, many years. A lot of times these debates don't always show you who has the best ideas, who has the largest vision, whose plans would really work. It becomes down to this personality thing. It comes down to this who can get a quick jab in, a quick there, a quick swipe on somebody's record there. And in the course of these debates, I would highly encourage you folks that in the midst of all of the insults, in the midst of all of the chatter, that you know, when you listen to them, that you go to a trusted source for fact checking, because it is in these conversations, in these platforms, where you find that some candidates don't necessarily, they just don't tell the truth. There was a moment in the debate where it was talked about that Governor Nikki Haley, and I believe it was Senator Tim Scott, making a point that she paid $55,000 to get some curtains in her office done, which is not true. It was actually when she became the UN ambassador under the Trump administration, those things were already allocated for her to have an upgraded, her office to be upgraded by the Obama administration. That's by the Obama administration, not by her. She had no parts of that decision making of how that money was spent and how it you know, how much it cost. No parts of that. So that's just like a small part of the constant lies that you kind of have to watch out for during forums like this, during platforms like this, because it gives people the impression of one thing. And again, when you lie, it makes people think something else other than what they're supposed to be thinking. So that's just a small thing. Here's one of the cringeworthy moments, though, that everybody has been talking about, which is this moment about sleeping with a teacher. Take a look at what Governor Chris Christie had to say about the situation as he tried to talk about education.
But what this is, this public school system is no longer run by the public. It is run by the teachers' unions in this country. Randi Weingarten and her crew are absolutely strangling. They are taking the worst of their members and defending them rather than advocating for our kids. And when you have the President of the United States sleeping with a member of the teachers union, there is no chance that you could take the stranglehold away from the teachers union every day. They have an advocate inside the White House every day for the worst of their teachers, not for our students to be the best they can be. A President of the United States has to take on the teachers union. I did it in New Jersey, and I will do it as President of the United States.
Okay. All right, Lise. He said he wanted to take on a teachers union. Okay, let's continue to play this clip about teachers.
Chris, you mentioned the president's situation. My wife isn't a member of the teachers union, but I got to admit I've been sleeping with a teacher for 38 years, and so full disclosure.
Full disclosure. Right. Oh my God. Okay. All right. Oh, full disclosure. What are we talking about here? First, look how dirty it has gotten. Like, what? How do you talk about policies of teachers, and then you bring in the president sleeping with his wife, who was a part of the teachers union? Where's this going? What is going on with it? And then you have Mike Pence, who's just sitting there, is like, for full disclosure, I've been sleeping with the teacher for 38 years, and she taught me a few things last night. Okay, had to bring out the yardstick on him. What? This is where we are, folks. I mean, this is just where we are. And it gets so down and dirty, and it gets so ugly after a while. You just lose a sense that this is probably one of the most historical elections of our lives, right? That when you go that down and dirty, when you go that low, it's crazy. All right, let me get your take on this, folks, as we talk about this. Yeah. Pauline, you checking in. My sister Pauline, good to see you. You said, who cares who you are sleeping with? Facts, Pauline. That's what I'm wondering. Who cares? Like, this is, and you cannot tell me in a moment like that, folks, that the way women are perceived and the way women, I mean, it's just, you don't put that type of information. You don't even, I mean, just all do with everything else is with just complete, this is highly disrespectful. It's highly disrespectful. You may not agree with the man on his policies. You may not agree with the man on his vision or the direction, but you're talking about the man and the president of the United States and his wife, and you're talking about him in such a low down, dirty manner that it just reeks of insensitivity. It reeks of misogyny. It just reeks, man. Absolutely reeks. Okay. Yeah, not the yardstick, Corinna. Yeah, he had to pull out the yardstick. Yeah. What? what are we talking about here? See what I'm saying? And it's those moments that catch the national attention. Absolutely. All right, let me see who else we've got here. Kenneth Sutton, you checked in and said, how can that be done without discussing reparations and adding legal remedies for racism? Let's talk a little bit about that, right? These conversations that we often see, these platforms, they don't bring up those type of discussions. And it is always fascinating and highly interesting to me, folks, that when there are debates like this, our issues aren't brought to the forefront. And I really wish that there was a space, a platform, a group, I don't care who the group is, that speaks to Black folks, that understand the interests of Black folks, will go toe to toe with Republican candidates on certain issues, right? Because Black America loses out. Yes, I mean, other things are important to us. Of course, the economy is important to us. Of course, national security is important to us. But those culturally relevant discussion points gets lost in the course of all of this other stuff. Those things that are highly important, the top priority for Black America continues to be lost. Yeah. Pastor Damon Blissett, you said measuring contest, how low can we go? Yeah. When they go low, as Michelle Obama said, First Lady Michelle Obama said, when they go low, that's all I'm gonna say. Tiana, you checked in and said, this just shows that they don't respect teachers at all. Prime example. Not only don't they show that they don't respect teachers in terms of the work that teachers do, teachers being organized as a union, and you're talking about education, but you made it such a dirty thing. I mean, come on, Chris Christie, you know what and please, if Chris Christie comes out and say, I didn't mean no disrespect, nobody would put that issue in that type of context without trying to be disrespectful and without trying to be harmed. Please. Corinna, you bring up this excellent point. I watched the GOP debates to study the opposition's power play, nothing more than that. I don't even know if you can even gain anything from the power play. Like, when you look at this last night's debates, these guys was fumbling and bumbling, talking over each other. It's very hard to have a better understanding of what they really stand for. And then the big Trump factor is always hovering over the whole conversation, that it takes away from you actually hearing about certain things. Yeah, you might get a couple of policy points here and there, but this is all political theater in my point of view. I remember we had my man Hassan Giordano here, one of our great political analysts here. And when those debates come up, he worked in many spaces. He said, Farajii, you can't take those things seriously because it becomes this show for the American people instead of it becomes more entertainment than more information. Cindy D, you said that kind of talk worked for Trump in 2016. It didn't work last night. No, it definitely didn't. Anastasia, you checked in. You said, first of all, when he was governor, he could have done something about the school system, but now you want to do something about when you become president? Are you kidding me? Great point. I think that's part of that critical thinking, Anastasia, that the American people need to have more of, right? It's like, how are you going to talk bad about a system where you were in a position of power and influence to change the dynamics of a system? Excellent point. So, it's, again, you look at these debates, I understand Corinna's point. You look at them to see where people stand, the opposition's power. But I also keep it in the back of my mind, folks. This is all entertainment. And unfortunately, this is how we like it. That's the big part. We like to be entertained at all costs, at all the time here in America, unfortunately. And I mean, it's one thing to be entertained, it's another thing to be informed, but more importantly, looking at the crisis that exists right now in the democratic system, do we need to be laughing? Do we need to be cringing? Or do we need to be thinking? Those are the big questions. All right, I got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about leading and advancing racial inequity. I'm going to be checking in with Nobel Peace Prize winner Rebecca Irby, and she talks about the work that she's doing in the city of Detroit and changing the conversation about race. Stay with us. That discussion is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
On his first day in office, with the country in crisis, President Biden got to work for us. Cutting Black child poverty in half, more money for Black entrepreneurs, millions of new, good-paying jobs. He's lowered the cost of living and prescription drugs. But there's more to do. He gets it because we all deserve dignity, safety, respect, and a chance to do more than just get by, but to get ahead.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Let's switch gears now, talking about what happened last night, to talking about something that seems to constantly be happening in Black America, which is talking about racial injustice, racial inequity. And this is the topic, and more importantly, this is the mission of resolving this issue of leading and advancing racial equity. This is the mission of my first guest today. She serves as the director, and this is fantastic work she's doing, the director of transformational change at New Detroit. And she's part of a team that won the Nobel Peace Prize for their work around the issue of advancing racial equity. They're also going to, her organization, along with the other organizations around the country, will be a part of a major convention later on in October. We're going to get some more details about that, but I'm very, very happy to have my special guest joining me today to talk to us about what does this look like, what does this mean, especially in light of the political, economic, and social landscape we find Black America in. So I want to welcome to the airways of the culture here on the Black Star Network, Miss Rebecca Irby. Rebecca, thank you so much, sis, for joining us. How you feeling this afternoon?
Oh, excellent. So excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting us and having us on today. Real excited.
Absolutely. Absolutely. First and foremost, congratulations. I know this has been some time, but congratulations being a Nobel Peace Prize recipient. That is a major accomplishment. Does that still, I mean, this happened, you were part of a team back in 2017. So does it still resonate? Does it still does it still kind of shocking that you were able to be a part of a team to do such distinguished work?
At points, absolutely. It's still hard to believe. Our small and mighty team won.
That's fantastic. That is certainly fantastic. All right, let's talk to us about the work that you're doing, because again, you serve as the director of transformational change at New Detroit. This sounds like some very exciting, powerful work. What is the mission of transformational change at New Detroit?
Yeah, thank you for asking. And as you said, it is the start of something really big and something really exciting. And it is such an honor to be leading this process. But to answer your question more directly, transformational change really talks about looking at and understanding what it takes to make transformation, and understanding that it really comes from best practices. There's a lot of research behind these methodologies, and that when we use these systems that we work. So looking back at other initiatives throughout time, the abolition movement for slavery, the civil rights movement, even the campaign that I worked on to win the Nobel Peace Prize, we use the same tenets and same processes. And it's really this understanding of a multi-pronged approach where we have to impact the way that people are thinking. We've got to impact how folks are talking about these issues. And then that combined with working on policy, working on legal structures, and then very importantly, working on power dynamics and relationships. So kind of hitting all of those at one time, we see that there's power in the collective action and in our ability to really make change when we bring folks together to focus on an issue and focus in a multidisciplinary way. We can't solve problems in silos. So it's this understanding of a multicultural, a multidisciplinary approach, and then using these processes to really work that and see change and see how we can work together to make that change.
So Rebecca, based on that, and I mean, that sounds fantastic. And it sounds much more intentional for one, scientific for two, right? For an issue that strikes at the heart of one's humanity, right? That when we think about racial justice work, we sometimes, I think a lot of us are familiar with that current state of protesting, being in the streets type of work. Then there are the cultural conversations that we often have amongst ourselves, right? Then there is the moral conversations that I've heard from pastors and faith leaders about the moral sensibilities of this issue. So you have all of these dynamics. Why did you decide, or why had the transformational change decided to take this approach, a more like I said, more scientific approach to this issue?
Thank you for asking that. And all of the groups that you mentioned and everything that's happening, it's so critical. And what's really important to understand is that this work can't happen without every single one of those components. And the quote unquote scientific approach is really understanding alignment and how we can bring folks together, and this understanding that we are all interconnected. So we say it's science-based, but it's really looking back at ancient indigenous practices and traditions, and really looking at the way in which we've been able to come together as a species in the past, what has worked, what hasn't worked, and really drawing on ancestral knowledge. So yes, it is backed by science, but I say it's really backed by our ancestors. And we have this long trajectory that we can draw on from that.
All right, so look, we're going to take a quick pause, Rebecca, and I got more questions for you about that approach, because I think that is much different than what we have been taught and what we're conditioned to think, especially to think about this issue of racism in this country. And I like it. I like the fact that it's drawing upon what the ancestors have already laid out. But I think there's some pushback on that, right? I'm sure you probably heard some criticism about that, but we want to talk a little bit more about that and so much more. Folks, we're just getting started as we check in with our sister, Rebecca Irby, who serves as the Director of Transformational Change at New Detroit. She's a Nobel Peace Prize winner, part of a fantastic team that has been doing a lot of work and research around the issue of racial equity. And we wanted to have this conversation for our Big Culture Convo. We want you to join us right now as we're streaming live on YouTube under Roland Martin's YouTube page. Join us in the conversation, post your questions, share your thoughts, and let's continue the discussion on the other side. Stay with us, folks. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
President Biden has delivered for Black America. More funding for Black entrepreneurs. Millions of new good-paying jobs. He's lowering the cost of medications and the cost of living. Joe Biden is delivering for us, and that's the facts.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, We have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been checking in with Miss Rebecca Irby, who serves as the Director of Transformational Change at New Detroit, which is an organization that is working on the issue of racial equity and justice. And they are doing some phenomenal work there in Detroit, Michigan, but more importantly, to try to change the conversation around this issue. And Rebecca, you were talking about when we look at the approach that transformational change has been taking, looking at this is being guided by the ancestors. So I think that that's very, very interesting. And then that two is looking at all of these other factors that has led us to this point. First, let's talk about this piece of guided by the ancestors. Did you find that in your historical research that there was a pattern that the ancestors kind of created as a result to deal with this? And when we say ancestors, how long ago are we talking about here? Which ancestors helped you to kind of inspire you on this process?
Yes. So I think that answer is kind of twofold. So there are kind of our ancestors here in the United States. There are our ancestors who were stolen from Africa. There are our ancestors that go back even deeper and further than that. So when I look at and I think about this work, specifically when I'm thinking about racial healing and what that looks like, and understanding how intergenerational trauma, so this is trauma that happened in our past to our ancestors, how that's passed down. So there's now scientific evidence backing this up. We can see genetic markers. It's really fascinating research. And it had me thinking that not the only thing that's passed down, though. Resiliency is passed down. All of these things are passed down through our ancestors. So when we think about the true interconnectivity of all of us, so even to the past, how we're anchored in the past, it has me thinking much more deeply about history and how critically important it is for us to understand our history, where we've come from, but most importantly, why we're where we are right now. So I did start going and digging back and trying to find the root of this. How did we get to a place where in this country specifically, it's so incredibly disproportionately, wildly different results for different groups? And we know the answer, slavery, racism, but how did that even come to be? So looking back and understanding, we say that America is an experiment in democracy, but when you go back and you actually look at the history, America is an experiment of what happens when you steal folks and kidnap them and create a complete and utter economic system based on slave labor, and how much power can be amassed, how much money can be amassed, and what can we do with that? And if you found a nation on that, what does that result in? So looking back all the way back into the 1400s, way before Columbus came and started exterminating our native brothers, in 1444 is one of the founding documents that really helped push this narrative, and it was the first mention of race. It's the first lie that was created around what race even is and why it needed to be created, but it's called the doctrine of discovery. I'm not going to put my teaching hat on, so we want to talk more about that. I'm happy to dig into it, but like understanding this deep, deep, insidious history and the founding of our country, like it is encoded in our Constitution. And if you know the code, which is such persons equals slaves, once you know that and you start to look back, you're like, oh my goodness, slavery is all over the Constitution. It is enshrined in our Constitution, but we don't know that because we're not taught our true history.
I'm listening, Rebecca. I'm listening. I'm taking this all in. So you're taking me to school right now. So your professor hat is definitely on. You're taking me to school right now. All right. So if we're looking at the past, you can see all of these patterns. You can kind of help to connect the dots, right? I would think that one of the biggest challenges is to take that knowledge and transferring it to the modern context, right? And that way that people can start to see, right? When I hear the conversation around racial justice, it's often to white people, about white people. Is that the best process to take? Or is it our efforts should be more directed to those of us who are the recipients of that, who have been oppressed by that, right? Who have been shaped by that? Because you mentioned that it's in our DNA, it's a part of our genetics, right? That the pain, the trauma, all of that has been passed down along with all of the great brilliance and resilience and all of those wonderful qualities. But how is this a 1-2 effort? Is this like, you have these two groups of efforts where you got to talk to white people and talk to black people at the same time, or you got to do one first and then the next thing after that? Give me some understanding on how this should be moved, how you're moving along with this.
Yes, I love this question. And when I think really critically about this, and this might be a little difficult to hear, but when we think about generational and intergenerational trauma, there's trauma on both sides, white and black. And that's sometimes difficult, especially as people of color, to hear, like, I don't want to hear about their trauma. I don't need to worry about that. But
they do have trauma.
But exactly. So hurt people hurt people.
So wait a minute, hold on, because I know, because you're talking to black folks now. You're talking to black folks, right? You're talking to black folks. Now you're getting into a different part of the game, the conversation, right, Rebecca? Where we're talking about the hurt of white people. I just wanted to make it clear.
So
you're talking about the trauma that white people have experienced as a result of being oppressors.
Yes, exactly. Like
wow.
Oppression and racism and trauma, it is embedded in all of us. And it does not matter which side you fall on, it is impacting you. So when we think about racial healing, it isn't a question of this group versus that group. It is us as humans, us as interdimensional, interconnected beings, that all of our trauma is embedded within each other. So I don't think about it in what are we doing for the Black community? What are we doing for the white community? What are we doing for the Asian community? What are we doing for our people? What are we doing for humanity moving forward? When I think about this and think about my space in this arena as a multi-ethnic human, I have the privilege of having a few different families that I get to be connected to and involved in. And so I know that the way that I see this might be radically different than even my cousin who her whole family is a Black family, or my cousins who their whole family is a white family. I have both that I am navigating. I live in the liminal in between spaces. So when I think about what healing means, I'm thinking as a collective, our human family. But I will say, all of that to say that I truly believe in affinity spaces, and that it's really critical and important for us to find spaces that we feel safe. Because healing can't happen if we don't feel that we're in a safe container. So I am all for affinity groups. And I think that the thing that I don't want to see happen is that it's not happening congruently. It's not like I want to see it happening at the same time. It doesn't necessarily have to happen in the same place, right? So we can have our safe spaces for folks of color. We can have our safe spaces for the white peers, because they need that space too. I don't know if I'm going to be the best representative to hold space for that, but I do know some incredible practitioners that can. Right. So it's not, for me, it's not a question of one over the other or which one is first. It's all happening at the same time, but understanding that we do have to create those safe spaces for folks to even start having the conversation. And one of the things I notice most when I start to have these conversations is there's so much fear. And when you're in a state of fear, there's no learning happening. There's no growth happening. So making sure that we are creating those really safe containers to even start these conversations.
And can I add to that?
Absolutely.
And can I add to that? And I know we got to take another quick pause, but I would also think that there's a lot of denial. There's a lot of denial. Now, we see that in terms of, and you know, here on BSN, we have when Brother Roland in his, you know, in that promo around his book, you know, listening to whiteness scholars talking about this white rage, right? But then there's this white fear, then there's this white denial. Like, it's a lot of denial. Yes. Like, we don't want to confront the elephant in the room.
Exactly.
And I'm saying not Black people. No. I'm saying for white America. Yes. White America do not want to believe that their ancestors has created or can be that evil.
Right.
Like, and so there's like, no, that can't possibly be. Versus.
So one of the big pieces of that is separating out the connection of what is in my heart. So bigotry, right? That is real. And that, especially with white Americans, getting to a point where we're able to say, this is my hope, that we can get to a place where I can be like, oh, you got a little racism there on your cheek. And it would be similar to the same way that you're telling somebody they got lettuce in their teeth, right? Like me saying that something you're doing is racist, or a policy that you have inside your organization is racist, I'm not talking about your heart. I'm talking about a structure and a system that you're upholding. And you probably didn't know, because this entire system was created for a person that has shown up in a white body to never, ever notice. Like, if you didn't notice, then the system is working correctly because you were never supposed to. And it's my job to help you and walk you into this space of understanding, not in an accusatory way, because I want you to learn right now. Once you know and you choose not to do something, then we're moving into other isms, right? That's not just racism then. Like, maybe there's some prejudice there, maybe there's some bias, maybe there's some bigotry. Those are separate conversations. But to open up and to start the conversation, we really have to understand and separate what is in my heart, me, right, as a person, versus the system and the systemic nature of racism and what that means.
Look, we got to take another quick pause and take just a breather, because you're dropping some jewels right now, Rebecca. Dropping some jewels. Look, when we come forward, Rebecca, Benny Hill, one of our culture crew members, said, Farajii, please express to her why white apologetics is a huge leap backwards. I would love to get your take on what Benny is bringing into the conversation, Rebecca, about white people who are becoming more apologetic about this whole situation, this whole scenario, what does that mean? Is that a big leap backwards? I mean, Benny says it is, but would you agree or disagree with that? And so much more. Folks, we'll continue the conversation on the other side as we check in with Rebecca Irby, Director of Transformational Change at New Detroit, as we're talking about leading and advancing racial equity. Join us in the conversation. We are streaming live on YouTube under Roland Martin. Post your comments, be a part of the Culture Crew, and stay tuned. We still got a lot more to talk to Rebecca about here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
On his first day in office, with the country in crisis, President Biden got to work for us. Cutting Black child poverty in half, more money for Black entrepreneurs, millions of new, good-paying jobs. He's lowered the cost of living and prescription drugs. But there's more to do. He gets it because we all deserve dignity, safety, respect, and a chance to do more than just get by, but to get ahead.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation, you and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. We are continuing our conversation from the first half of the show where we're talking about leading and advancing racial equity. And we're talking to one sister who's doing the work. Her work has been recognized as being distinguished work, as she was a part of a team to kind of lead this conversation, pushing the discussion forward around racial equity. So she was able to be one of the recipients, as part of a team, a recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize for her work in the area of racial justice and racial equity. And so we're happy to have my sister Rebecca Irby on, who serves as the Director of Transformational Change at New Detroit, talk to us about what does this mean, especially in light of the current racial landscape that we find ourselves in this country, around everything from banning books to the talk about Black America and our value. There will be a major conference coming up, and I know, Rebecca, I want to give time for you to just talk a little bit about that in a little bit, about this conference coming up in October that's happening in Michigan, where folks are going to be convening to really continue to push things forward. So I want to make sure people have an opportunity to participate in that as well. But going back to the point I made before the pause, Benny Hill, one of our culture crew members, bringing up the fact, he said, Farajii, please, I mean, he put that thing long, Rebecca, please express to her why white apologetics is a huge leap backwards. First and foremost, do you agree with Betty on this? Do you think that when you have apologists from white America to talk about the issues and they're, oh, I'm sorry, do you feel like it's a leap backwards?
So I don't know if I'm very familiar with what he's speaking about specifically, but I can, I think I can still answer the question. If I had seen something like that, and even just you explaining it, someone apologizing, like you weren't alive then. Don't apologize for something that you didn't impact. If you're being racist now and you're bigoted, apologize for that. So I could see why someone would feel like it's a very big step backwards, because it's irrelevant. I don't need your apology. I need your actions. I need you to be involved. If you feel badly about what your ancestors did, which is not the point, but if you do, okay, you can ask yourself, why do you feel that way? Is there something that you can be doing today to have an impact, to make so let's say you're an ancestor of a slave owner. Okay. How can you help impact and make right what was done? But like, there's such a, no, yeah, I don't think that it's appropriate. Like, I don't know. This is
I like that. I mean, I'm about to put that on social media. I don't need your apology. I need you to take action.
Yeah. I don't need an apology, because what does that do actually? And so an apology means I'm not going to do it again. But there are so many modern forms of slavery that are still happening today. When we look at our incarceration system, there are so many places that we can have impact. So if you're feeling apologetic, move out of that space of self-pity and move into action.
Beat Lay Face, you checked in and said that you cannot deny racism, as we talked about this piece of denial. And I would think the same way, Beat Lay Face. Beat Face Lay, excuse me. You when you said that, I'm like, yeah, you can't deny racism. But in 2023, racism is being denied each and every day.
Yes.
And so what are we seeing there, Rebecca?
Whitewashed, even out of our history.
Right. So what are we seeing? Is this, I mean, this level of denial, if you are, whether you're white or black or whatever the case may be, but you're saying like, no, when you have this level of pushback against something that has legitimately happened, there's evidence of it, there's documentation about it, and yet you still say, what is that? Is that really denial? Is that ignorance? Or you just want to hold on to being racist? I mean, what are we looking at here at this point?
White knuckling, holding on to like the last grasp of what has been considered a certain way of life. To me, it speaks to fear. And I won't say a few, because it's more than a few, but there is a contingent within this country that believes a certain way, and they want to see, and they have been sold and told that this America that was created for them, that it would always be there. and that America is looking different, and there's the American dream. There's so many different layers right now. So to me, it really just speaks to fear. But I know this is going to sound crazy, but I think it also gives me so much hope. When there's so much pushback, when there is such kind of animosity towards an issue, one small correction. The Nobel Peace Prize that we won was actually for my work in nuclear weapon and abolishing nuclear weapons. So making
Well,
them
please make that distinction. I don't want to take that. Thank you for the correction.
But the
Yes,
reason
ma'am.
I bring that up is because in our campaign and when I first started, I was told that I was crazy, that I was insane, that talking about nuclear weapons, no one is ever, like, it is absolutely impossible, Rebecca. You are pushing a boulder up a mountain wearing ice skate, like so many different analogies as to why I should not even attempt to look at in this area, never mind work in it, because it was impossible. And the amount of pushback that we got from everyone, even people who were allegedly on our side, the amount of pushback got so intense right before we broke through. And I've seen that happen over and over in a number of different movements. So to me, when I see this level of pushback, this level of denialism, I'm like, all right, we are making progress because we have ruffled all of the feathers and people are up in arms right now. So that means that we continue pushing. We are going to see a huge breakthrough. And like, this is where it's so critical for folks to not lose hope and to understand that this is actually the opening of our moment. It's not being pushed back. Like, this is when we get everyone and we like move forward together. This is the moment for that, not to step back, to step in and to push forward.
All right, so Culture Crew member VB said, my question is, when are we as a people going to take action? That's why I haven't been on this chat for a while. I'm tired of all the talking. Well, first thing, VB, what you think? I'm gonna come bring you on? I'm gonna bring people on. We're gonna just like kick off the revolution on TV. No, I understand exactly what you're saying, VB. I got you. But we do have to have some conversation about certain things. But Rebecca, what's your take on the sentiment and the comment that VB is expressing, that it's a lot of talking? What's the action?
VB, I am 1,000,000% with you. I feel that way every day. It's like, okay, it is time for us to stop with all of this talk. We have to be able to talk and act at the same time. So one of the things I'm really excited about with our conference that's coming up, I know we'll talk about it in a little bit, but that is one of our big initiatives. New Detroit has started a new coalition, also one of our initiatives. We're a part of a number of other coalitions, but all of this moving towards action, short-term actions that we can take on initiatives that partners are doing, but also, and most importantly, working on and creating an action plan for the region that we're using as a pilot of what it looks like to actually impact racism and oppression. And so multiple steps, but movement happening along each one of them. Change is not short term. And people don't like to hear this, but when we look at and when we see change, what it actually takes is about 7 to 9 years. And I know that sounds like a long time, but there are so many points in between. You can start to see things changing within a few months. And if you know how to build in milestones to keep people motivated, you can have them moving along this spectrum until you get to the point where you see the massive change. But when we think about it, massive change, something to change a huge system, you can't just shift it. You have to start slowly. A small fraction of a percentage in the trajectory will give you a huge difference over time.
But I would agree with you there, Rebecca, because I've worked as a community organizer, as an activist for many years, as it relates to policy change, as it relates to, even now we're talking, we often talk about cultural change. So we're talking about behavioral change, mindset change, those things, right? So it does take time. And I've come across, I mean, from the Pan-Africanist space to the nationalist space to the those who are the integrationist space, all of these folks are saying something needs to be done like right now, right? And I'm often in VB, I don't know if you're still in the chat, because VB said, I gotta go, I got to get up out of here, I need to hear action. And I get it, and I totally get it. But I'm wondering, what type of change are we really asking for, right? Are we asking for the complete, utter annihilation of white people in this country? And I know it might sound crazy, and I'm not trying to sound crazy, but I'm just saying, because I think that's where some of the sentiments, the pain runs so deep. And this is not coming from a racist racism. This is coming from being oppressed for so long that you just want to be done with people, systems, everything. You feel like, I just need to start over. So when we had that part of the conversation where we're trying to break through all of the pain, through all of the systems, and then people get to that space where they're like, you know what, this is not enough. This is not hard enough. It doesn't make the type of impact that we need to make. People are kind of like throwing up their hands, and they slowly remove themselves from this larger process that you are engaged in and others have engaged in, which is to create that change, hopefully to shorten that time frame from 7 to 9 years to 4 to 5 years or something along those lines. You know what I'm saying? So can you speak to that?
I have one of my favorite quotes from Assate Shakur, something that I look at often, but when we think about her words, so she says, "It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love and protect one another. We have nothing to lose but our chains." Like, we have to understand our place in this fight, and that no one's going to advocate or do the fight for us. And we've been fighting for hundreds of years. And I hope that there is a much shorter term of resolution. But I know that my ancestors are looking to me and to all of us to continue the fight that they started. And I take this to heart. It is my duty to win. And I live with that, and I take that on every day.
Right. Absolutely. Let me see here. VB, you were stuck around, so I appreciate you. See, you all do recall we shut down this transit system. I'm just saying there needs to be movement. You all sound like you're making excuses. Are we making excuses? Yeah. Does that come across? Because I feel like movements are happening. There are racial justice movements, racial equity movements in this country, and they're happening. Here's one of the big ones. And I know we got a couple of moments left, and I'm going to make sure I'm giving you at least a moment or so, Rebecca, to talk about the conference. One of the things that I saw, and it still happens, people say 2020, the summer of 2020, George Floyd was killed, was a quote unquote racial reckoning for America. And it bothered me to my soul, Rebecca, that I had to look up the word reckoning. And reckoning simply means that something that has been long overdue, an undue wrong, a wrong that has been happening has finally been resolved. There has been a resolution. When I look at that, the basis of that word compared to the reality of where we are, there has been no reckoning. There has been no solid resolution. So part of the conversation, I think, comes from the language that's used to describe the space that we are in, that the reckoning is not going to happen during a 3-month period of a summer. Like, just because you have corporate America that says, yep, he shouldn't have had his knee on that black man's neck. That is not a reckoning.
No, maybe a recognition.
Hey. Come on, sis. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
But what is the reckoning that we are claiming has happened? Because 3 years after George Floyd, we're still talking about the same thing. We still don't have a police reform bill politically. we still have problems. We still have a dysfunction. Black folks still have a dysfunctional relationship with the police, right? We're still talking about racism even now. I mean, if there was a reckoning, we wouldn't even have a conversation about banning books and not teaching Black history if there was a serious reckoning. So are we deluding ourselves at this point when it comes to racism?
Yes. To answer shortly, yes, I think we are. I also had a very difficult time with the language that was used around 2020 because, again, a reckoning means that there's repair happening, and that's not happening. There is a short recognition, and that's important, and that's really honestly the first step. So I'm not. I think what happened in 2020 was necessary, and it's an important step forward. And it galvanized a lot of movements, and that's incredibly important. To the folks who are saying nothing is happening, one of the things that I think is so critical and why I love what you're doing here and your program and this entire network, the Black Star Network, is so critically important because folks don't know the amazing work that's happening on the ground. I just came back from a coalition meeting this afternoon where in Michigan, there's a budget that was just passed in education that's going to have a huge positive impact on our lower resource communities. And that was long fought with so many different groups looking and advocating for. And a lot of those folks came from the summer of 2020 that they got involved in this work in the first place. So when folks say nothing is happening, to me, that really just says that we need more programs like this one. We need more folks talking about the incredible work that is happening because there's so much going on. The real, I think, the criminal piece of this is that nobody knows what's happening. And we're only hearing about these smaller groups that have a very, very loud voice and have a lot of funding to get their racist and bigoted messages out, as opposed to all of these grassroots groups that don't have funding, that don't have money, and don't have a way of getting their story out. So folks don't see the incredible work, and they're getting disheartened, and they're getting stepping out of the movement because they don't see what's happening. But yeah.
Absolutely. All right. I want to give you a moment, Rebecca, as we talk about this, because Michigan is going to be hosting the largest conference on racial justice as we talk about this issue of leading and advancing racial equity. There's an upcoming conference on October 19th and 20th. Called Just Lead Advancing Racial Equity, and it will include Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and writer Nicole Hannah-Jones, who is the author of the 1619 Project, which she developed for the New York Times and New York Magazine. You're going to be there, also featured, going to be there, Rebecca Irby, David the Dialogue Guy Camp, which is a renowned speaker and creator of the White Ally Toolkit. So this is going to be
affinity spaces, right? We got places for folks to come together, but we also got affinity spaces.
Right. So you got this. So this is big conference that's happening. Give us some more details, because this is going to be, again, Thursday, October the 19th, Friday, October 20th. Folks, and y'all can go to newdetroit.org. And Lisa, if we can pull up the website for that, newdetroit.org, because people are doing some work. But give us some more insight about this convening.
Absolutely. And thank you. It's going to be such an incredible event. It's our second annual. Last year, we had Dr. Kendi as our keynote. And as you mentioned, this year, we're so excited to invite and welcome Nicole Hannah-Jones. She's going to be speaking about her project, the 1619 Project. I already mentioned some of what I'm going to be talking about, digging even further back into history, so going all the way back to 1444. So there's going to be a lot of history that we're talking about, because we really feel it's important for us to know our history in order to move forward. But there won't be only things about history and learning. It's going to be some really incredible sessions. It is the 50th anniversary of hip hop this year. We've got the incredible performers. We have Taste of Black Spirits for our evening. It's just going to be such an incredible event. Day one, we have a number of different plenaries. As I mentioned, we're going to be working on and talking about how we build these action plans and what it looks like to actually be on the ground doing the work and how folks can get involved. Day two, as you mentioned, is going to be more workshops. So David Camp will be there. We have Rose Moten. She is such an incredible healer. So looking at racial healing, what that looks like, the white allyship. We have Jamon Jordan, the city historian. We're going to be doing a walking tour. Just such incredible resources for anyone who works in the space of DEI or is in business, in government, and nonprofits. If you want to come and be in a joyous place talking about how we combat racism and oppression, this is the place to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I appreciate that. And I like the fact that you and the other organizations involved, y'all calling yourselves New Detroit. New Detroit.
New Detroit is actually, it started in 1967. So when the organization first started, they came together just as a coalition of leaders in response to, so a number of different words, the racial riots, the uprising. There's so many different terms of what happened in the summer of 1967, but that's when New Detroit was formed. So it is actually the country's oldest racial justice organization. They thought that they were only going to be around for 2 or 3 years. So wow. That was where the name comes from. But as I know.
Wow. They started in 1967.
But I think it speaks to the legacy.
Yeah.
Exactly what we're talking about, how pervasive this issue and how racism is in every single system, in every single space. So it's going to take a little while for us to unseat it and uproot it.
Absolutely. I got 30 seconds. What is the best way that a person can get involved in this larger space of work? If racial justice, racial equity, what would you say is the best way? If a person's listening to the show today and they're like, oh, okay, sister's bringing up some points, some things that I need to consider, how can they get involved, Rebecca? What would you say is the best step for them to take?
So I always tell, and especially when I'm speaking to young folks, but I think this goes for everyone, what are you passionate about? Whatever it is that you do in the world, you can do with a race equity lens. So if you're constantly thinking about how you can make what you do more equitable, we will have a greater impact. Like, we don't need people jumping from their careers to come and be a DEI specialist. Like, that's not what is helpful. You staying in your passion and being passionate about what you do with an equity lens, thinking about how you personally make an impact. Because that's what we need to knit this quilt together of folks working on this across sectors. Like, we need people in every single sector working on this. So it is, again, it's up to us. And we really have so much more agency than we believe that we do.
This conversation will continue. And you know, I know some folks are probably listening. They're like, oh man, we're talking about bringing some equity. We're talking about, you know, some trauma, relieving trauma of Black people and white people. We're talking about, you know, our people, man. I think there is, and I don't have time to talk about it today, but I think there's a little bit of, you know, maybe we want some revenge. Maybe we want to see some other stuff happening in a much more violent way to feel like we are getting quote unquote justice. And I'm just throwing this out there because I've been in these spaces for years. I grew up as a child in these spaces, right? But I found out that it's been, the old saying goes, if you want to destroy white supremacy, it's through Black excellence. Then I've also found out that if you really want to stop a person from, you know, to change the person's slave condition, teach them a better way or how to think on a higher level. Teach them how to think above their circumstances. Give them new knowledge. And then once you get to that place, you won't have to worry about your oppressors, your former oppressors, rather, right? You won't have to, it won't be that, because we're at a time that even an intelligent brother, an intelligent Black woman is a threat to a system.
Yes.
That's and without even raising a gun, without even having to pull out as much as a penknife, you can be a threat to a system just with how you think, how you behave, and how you relate to your brother and to your sister, right? And we can spread that, change the culture within our community. Yes. You see what I'm saying? When I think back very quickly, when I think to how many Black leaders have come down, have been a part of our liberation struggle. Those leaders that have made the mark the way they have made, and there's no big I's and little U's, they have all made their mark. But they always focused on our thinking, our behavior, and our connection to the Creator. That's it. Because those were the things that were robbed from us when we made that transition. We lost the knowledge of self. We lost the knowledge of who God and and our religion, quote unquote, our spirituality. We lost the knowledge of how to relate to each other as men to women and women to men. I mean, these are things that were taken from us during that breakdown of making us into slaves, of enslaving us. And so we got to reverse the trend. I truly believe that. We truly got to reverse the trend. Rebecca, I thank you so much, sister. Congratulations on the work that you're doing. More importantly, thank you for continuing to do this work and having these conversations. A very hard conversation. And trust me, we're working in different capacities, but I think we're working towards the same goal here in trying to change the dynamic here. But I truly appreciate your insight and your expertise on the matter. Folks, Rebecca Irby, once again, Director of Transformational Change at New Detroit. Make sure y'all check out newdetroit.org. Go check it out. If you're in the Detroit area and you want to be a part of this conference, Just Lead Advancing Racial Equity, make sure y'all check it out. It's happening October 19th and 20th in Detroit, Michigan. And let's continue the conversation on the other side. Folks, thank you so much, Rebecca. Truly appreciate you.
One last plug, it is virtual as well.
Oh, it's virtual.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes,
absolutely.
We've got
You're
virtual
welcome.
tickets as well. So anyone from across the country, we'd love to welcome you there.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for mentioning that, sis.
It's been really, folks, really wonderful. Would love to come back and continue the conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk to DC author Kevin Quattlebaum about his books and, more importantly, telling our stories the way we want to tell them. Stay with us. That discussion is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
President Biden has delivered for Black America. More funding for Black entrepreneurs. Millions of new good-paying jobs. He's lowering the cost of medications and the cost of living. Joe Biden is delivering for us, and that's the facts.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. All right, let's shift gears now. I want to welcome our final guest, special guest in the conversation today. He hails from the District of Columbia, folks, and he is an author who has penned urban novels to tell the stories of the street life and, more importantly, to give us the real deal about Black life in the inner city. So I am very, very excited to be welcoming him to the airwaves of the Black Star Network here on The Culture, Mr. Kevin Quattlebaum. Kevin, good afternoon, big brother. How are you today? Let me see, we got Kevin. Okay, we don't have Kevin yet. All right, let's we're gonna keep it moving then. Check this out. I'm gonna go back to, I want to hear from the Culture crew on this situation here. As we look at that, and to my team, I advise you just to keep me up to date, please, on when Kevin is going to be able to join us. But take a look, folks. Let's talk a little bit about what we just heard, because I think that there was a lot of discussion, and I want us to put this in the context of what our sister Rebecca Irby is doing, right? When you do have these discussions, right? And we have to be very clear as to what we would like to see. What would we like to see? Because, crew, when we are in these conversations about voting, we in these conversations about political representation, when we're talking about improving the economic life of Black America, all of these discussions that we have, right? Is still within the confines of this particular system. Now, if any one of us is really saying, well, this is not enough, I need more, we need to do more, we need something dramatic. Okay, what do you want to do that's dramatic? What do you see? Because are you planning to run up on the White House like what we saw on January the 6th? I mean, seriously. Folks, when I tell you, I've been hearing conversations about Black power. What does that actually mean? When we say Black power, when we talk about Black superiority, right? When we're talking about Black justice, all of those things, right? We have to be clear. And of course, being on this space and on this platform, you know, we have to, and I think Young Seek, you brought the point up, bro. You talked about you have to talk. We got to have discussions around this if we are talking about moving this forward. Otherwise, if we can't at least discuss it to say, okay, this is a good idea, this is not such a good idea. You know, should we have conversations about diversity, equity, inclusion? Should we have conversations about advancing racial justice and advancing racial equity? Should we have conversations about what does it mean to have racial justice? then are we going to completely detach ourselves from this system of things? I mean, what are we asking for here? That's what I'm saying. Pastor Dave Quayles, thank you so much, Pastor, for joining us. You said it's our division that is a common thing. Let's work from there as goals. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, division. And it's when we're talking about the level of systems, and I think my sister Corinna can appreciate this because she's a systems thinker. I don't know if Corinna ever thought of herself as that, but I think she is. But when you're thinking about the levels of systems, the intricacies of each of these systems that we're a part of, right? Whether you're talking about economic, social justice, social systems, when you're talking about the healthcare system, educational system, think about all the systems that we are a part of in our everyday existence, right? Think about all of those systems. Think about how white supremacy continues to be at the root of all of these systems, right? But then at the same time, let's think about the fact of how do we take the power out of white supremacy, because that's what we're talking about, because that is the root of it all. The idea of white supremacy is the foundation of the systems that we are a part of, and it is the fundamental core of the beliefs and the beliefs of certain people, right? So we got to look at it and say, okay, what role can I play, and what should I do to be able to address this issue? What role should I play, right? What can I do? And I think that that's what each one of us have to ask ourselves, because the more and more you become conscious, the more and more you become empowered with history, understanding of history, understanding of law. As my brother Michael used to always say, talking about history and law, when you have an understanding of science, and when you have an understanding of all of these things, when you have all of this, how do you use all of that to empower not just yourself, but to empower a whole group of people who have become disempowered, disengaged for as long as we have become disempowered and disengaged? The condition that we find that Black America finds itself in is a very unique space, because we have been the products of the system, and now we're asking, how can we become the beneficiaries of the system? I'm gonna say that one more time, folks. We were the product. We were used as tools to bring in, as tools for another person or other people's enrichment. Our labor, our time, our talent, our skills, our sweat, blood, and tears were products. We were commodified when we were enslaved during chattel slavery. We were commodified. Now we are in this space of seeking our humanity, so that way we can gain the benefit of a system that we were commodified in and commodified by. I want y'all to talk to me on that, man. Think about that. The product now becoming the producer. Think about that. So there's going to be so many different ways for us to find ourselves and to get justice and to have a sense of humanity and to be seen as valuable. I mean, this thing is intricate. And I truly believe, this is what I honestly believe, and y'all tell me if y'all believe the same thing, that everybody can play a role in this. Now, Real Brooklyn, I saw your comment earlier, bro. You were talking about protests. You said protests. The days of Edmund Pettus is over, right? See? And I think part of that process is trying to figure out, like, what works what's the best way for us to get what we want right now, looking at the past, and then also considering, okay, the future that we want to try to experience as well. This is why it requires talking. This is going back to you, VB. You say, I get it. Trust me, I get it. There's the frustration. There's like, why we're talking about, where's the plan? I need a movement. You know how many movements there have been in Black history to get us to a different place? Corinna, you brought this point up excellently in a way when you said, talking about the reckoning piece, and you said it could have been a reckoning if we would have held, like, for example, you used Tim Scott in that police bill as an example, but you said it could have been a reckoning if we would have kept the foot on the gas, held Tim Scott accountable, if we would have kept going. But we got distracted. We started to believe after that summertime and after corporate America said, oh yeah, we stand with Black folks, and everybody started putting Black on their social media as their profile pics, and certain things the conversation started to slightly change, and people, who the hell is going to come out and say, yeah, man, I stand with the police officer that suffered? And I'm talking about corporations, I'm talking about institutions. No, it's in their best interest to continue to show their quote unquote solidarity up front. But we know that things happen behind closed doors as well. So, they're and I'm just pointing all of these things out because there are a lot of dynamics at play here, folks. But we got a role to play. We each can say to ourselves, okay, I can be the person on the sideline, or I can be the person that's in the game. You see what I'm saying? I could be the person on the sideline, or I can be the person that's in the game. Let me take a couple of quick comments from y'all as if we close it out here. Let me see here. Conscious Thought, you said, now that's the question. We're not organized is the key phrase. And also, Black people are too easily divided. Hugh Texture, responding to Pastor Dave Quayle, saying, how come we're not organized for the bigger picture? That's the question, Conscious Thought. We are not organized is the key phrase. We have been organized. We organize in spurts. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to say we have been completely disorganized. I don't find that to be the case. I just think we organize in spurts. It's how come when we do organize, it's not as consistent. I think part of the real reason as to why we admire the Civil Rights Organization is because that was an organized effort beyond what we are accustomed to. See, we looked at the Civil Rights Movement, right? When they did that Montgomery bus boycott, that was for months. It was like over a year. Can you imagine doing a campaign for over a year? But you got to be in a certain mindset, a certain frame of thinking to tell yourself, I'm not going to do it. Can that happen in 2023? I don't know. Can we? Can we? But think about all of the recent attempts and efforts to boycott, to do anything within the collective. There's so many divergent views on how things should be done. Because as much as we want to see change, we are still trying to figure out what does that mean? What does that look like, right? How does that fit your life? How does that fit my life? What capacity? Back then it was like, look, the enemy was very clear cut. Now we're dealing with not a new enemy, but a different iteration of what the enemy is. Back then you could be like, oh, okay, yeah, it's the white police officer, it's Governor Faubus, it's white people. Now you got to look out for like a Tim Scott, or, you know what I'm saying? You got to look out for people who talk Black in the public and appeal to white interest in private. It's a whole different dynamic. It's not that simple and clear cut. That's my point, folks. That's my point. And that's why I love just bringing people on. Hey, yeah, we can have the conversation, but we got to understand the dynamics that's at play here when you're talking about something as major as racial equity and racial justice. And what did that look like in 2023? In 2023, I mean, we're having conversations. White supremacy is no longer a dark term, meaning that people are talking about this stuff out in the open. Tiana, you said we were supposed to boycott the NFL. Look how that turned out. People are still boycotting the NFL, Tiana. I know black folks that don't watch football because of Colin. They're still talking about it. But look at the dynamics of it. You say, well, I'm not going to watch the NFL because of Colin's stance, but if you're 70% of the players are black, if there's still the pipeline from Pee Wee football to pro football, if the narrative around sports is it will get you out the hood, you going to tell black folks not to watch the NFL? If you're talking about if you're putting up paydays of $300 million for a contract, and you're telling black boys who are living in subhuman, substandard conditions, who know they got a gift on the field, hey man, once you try to do something else, they looking at you like you crazy. There's a new dynamic at play. McCall Lewis, you checked in. McCall, you said there's no consistency because the pain is not painful enough. We are beyond needing to go to the doctor. That's heavy. That's heavy, McCall. That is heavy. There's no consistency. That's heavy. The pain is not painful enough. That's a whole different conversation. I can think of so many things to respond to that. That's a whole different conversation. Let's see. Young Sikh, my guy, you said voting is the easiest and most potent one and done we all have in our hands. It was white folks across Europe with Black Lives Matter signs, but we can't even hit 65% voting numbers. If we voted, we have our reckoning. Okay. But ask black people who don't vote why they don't vote. And we've had this conversation. Why don't you vote? Right? Do you demonize your brother for not participating in the voting process? If your brother or your sister has felt like their interests aren't being met. Are we just talking about the simple exercise of voting, going to the ballot box, pulling the lever, whatever the case, that simple exercise, or we're talking about becoming politically conscious? Because I think they get kind of, people say, well, if you want a person to become politically conscious and they become politically conscious and they realize, oh snap, the candidates in front of me look like two sides of the same coin, I'm not going to take part in that process. Do you get mad at them? I mean, they're politically conscious. That's what we want, right? Or is it just simply pulling the lever, dropping the ballot into the box? So we got a lot of different things to consider during this situation. And I thank Rebecca for coming on to the show, kind of giving us another way for us to have the conversation, to look at the situation about leading and advancing racial equity, racial justice. What does that mean? And more importantly, how do we get involved? Look, if you're in the Detroit area, if you're in Michigan, maybe check out the conference. If you want to learn more, check out the conference. Hear what other people are saying. I highly recommend that we each get out of our comfort zones, right? Our silos, off of certain social media spaces, and just really listen to other people. And that's the purpose. One of the key reasons for the show. Let's bring on some new thought, because we got a lot to offer. Each one of us has something to offer to these conversations, especially like this one about racism, the impact that it has on us as a people. So it requires us to think differently, to hear and to listen actively. And it requires us to finally say, you know what, let me try to do something, and to see things from a different perspective that maybe we never considered before. Maybe we never considered. All right, folks, we're gonna have to reconnect with my brother Kevin Quattlebaum. and for another time, but we will certainly reconnect with him. But I appreciate each and every one of you. I want to thank again Rebecca Irby for joining us in the conversation as we had this discussion. And certainly I want to thank our other very special guests because, you know, again, this is what we're all about. This is what we're about. No, not other guests. What I was thinking. We just had Rebecca on today. But I was thinking Kevin. But I thank Rebecca for being on with us today. And folks, I thank y'all so much, to my culture crew, for joining us in the conversation. Folks, make sure you do your due diligence. Make sure you support us here at Black Star Network to continue these discussions. It's not easy. This is not tied up in a bow, folks, but that's okay, because this is the process of trying to think through this whole thing. So make sure you go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com, blackstarnetwork.com. And you can download the app for free, making sure that you follow us on social media. But your financial support is everything to us, and it helps us to continue to power these conversations in this overall digital movement. The frequency with my sister D Barnes has been streaming today as it does every Thursday. So make sure y'all check that out. All the dope programming that we have here, the Black Table, Dr. Carr, Get Wealthy, and so many other dope shows that we have on here. Your support is necessary and needed. Big shout out to our distributors of Amazon News and Fire TV, Plex TV, following us there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you let your friends and family know about the importance of checking in to the Black Star Network, to the culture here on the Black Star Network, to Roland Martin, Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Make sure that you also check out all of the latest streams that we are streaming. Like I said, we were streaming earlier today. Madam Vice President's Fight for Our Freedom. She's continuing her college tour, checking in with HBCUs and other colleges around the country to get young people engaged, involved in the process. So we were streaming her latest move today. So make sure y'all be a part of, check that out. We were also streaming everything around the situation in Alabama with the congressional district map and that situation, and just a lot of great things. We are always tapping in, trying to keep you informed. So it means a lot that you support us here on Black Star Network. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned. Up next is Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong, stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. I want to thank my dynamic team of Joe, Shannon, Maddie, Chris, Elise, and my man King Keenan for making this production the way it is. And I thank each and every one of you for tuning in. And I look forward to chatting with you and having more conversations with you over the next 24 hours or so. We'll be back here tomorrow. We got some dope conversations set up for you as well. So, and I got my sister Corinna Denise. She's gonna be checking in and a whole lot more. So make sure y'all tuning back into us here on The Culture, right here, only here, exclusively here on the Black Star Network. Talk to you soon. Peace.